I moved to Atlanta from Addis Ababa as a teenager in the late 90s. And for me, as someone who grew up on the continent of Africa, race was never a major part of my identity until I crossed the Atlantic. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge is a massive rift that exists on the ocean floor of the Atlantic, and it's positioned right in between Africa and the Americas. This became a really important way to think about Atlanta because the Mid-Atlantic Ridge really establishes this echo and link with the continent of Africa. It's also a site for an incalculable loss of Black life during the Middle Passage, as enslaved Africans were basically moving across that line to the Americas and the Caribbean. That line becomes the space for the formation of Blackness. So the moment you cross that line, you become Black. Atlanta is kind of a sprawling horizontal environment that is primarily defined by its highway infrastructure, single-family homes, and strip malls. It's not a city built on exceptional and monumental pieces of architecture, but ordinary spaces that really facilitate extraordinary events. These are spaces that have been undervalued just like the people who occupy them. We started asking ourselves, what does architecture do? And if the simplest answer is saying architecture makes space measurable, then we started thinking, what would immeasurability mean within that context? By saying we are interested in immeasurability, it forced us to move away from the iconic kind of permanent and monumental pieces of architecture and really reorient it towards everyday people and the environments they inhabit. For example, I'm thinking of the basements and closets of these single-family homes where these young musicians are producing some of the most important albums in popular culture. I'm thinking of the strip malls and fast food restaurants that provide spaces for different forms of communality for African Americans, African immigrants. Something like Waffle House is really typically associated with nightlife in Atlanta. Basically go out and you party until 4 a.m. and at 4 a.m. you would basically go to Waffle House for your final meal before you go to bed. We were really interested in the negotiation between this kind of lush, endless forest and the minimal nature of a Waffle House sign, and how the moment you put a Waffle House sign within the forest, it becomes a space of Blackness. Trying to negotiate my identity as an Ethiopian immigrant in a Black city who is understanding himself as a Black person for the first time. Music was the way in which I was able to emotionally relate to this new environment. Freaknik is this yearly event. Students would all basically fly to Atlanta for spring break and have a picnic or a party. Eventually became this thing where it would cause a lot of traffic jams throughout the city. And those traffic jams ended up becoming dance parties. So it became this way of reinterpreting the highway from a space that typically cuts off Black people from the city into a space for an extended dance party. I just find that extremely inspiring to think that the highway itself, this massive piece of infrastructure, could actually be co-opted to gain new meaning through something like Freaknik. There's something about these everyday environments that allows them to gain meaning based on who occupies them and the types of events they facilitate. I think these are spaces where Blackness as an identity is consistently being negotiated because they're also spaces that are devalued. You know, they're spaces that would never qualify as architecture with a capital A. For me, architecture is not only about making buildings. I love designing buildings, but I'm really, really invested in reimagining the built environment, meaning it's not just the city, but it's also the suburb. It's not just the buildings, but it's also the forest. The refusal to measurability. That allows us to begin to model and draw undervalued spaces, but it also helps us to engage with the city differently.